community wealth building values and principles. So these are the principles that we use at Nexus to help us think about the work, and also they'll help us look at the definition that I gave earlier. So the first one being equity, right? So equity has to be central for the work to take full advantage of the opportunity structures and truly eliminate racial and economic disparities. Essentially, we all do better when we all do better, right? Local ownership. Local ownership helps to increase the circulation of resources within community, and it builds more resilient economies. This fosters individual and family wealth. It helps to stabilize economies, and it strengthens ties between people and place. The next one being anchor institutions such as hospitals, schools, etc. And those are key partners to community creation because they have a sense of mutual exchange and interdependence with community that can be instrumental in shaping the neighborhood's long-term economic viability. The next one is mutuality. So mutuality has to be at the center of all partnerships and shared efforts. Understand that mutual care and responsibility are the core ingredients to a civil and communal work-life balance. The next is cultural practices, and I really enjoyed talking about cultural practices because I think we're beginning to see these as assets to our communities and not measuring ourselves against like whiteness or white standards, essentially saying that our cultural communities bring a lot to the table. So how can we use that to gain additional resources? So cultural practices, they hold solutions. For economic strategies have to be tailored for specific communities in order to benefit them. Culture is a resource for creating and expanding wealth building options. And that goes back to like the talk that was just given with like Black Wall Street, right? Creating specifically culturally appropriate strategies in order to elevate the cultural wealth in communities and community wealth. The next is develop community assets. So develop productive assets that support multiple wealth building strategies and systems. We have to create multi-lane strategies that reinforce one another and contribute to the economic fabric of our communities. The next is policy, systems, and leadership. Okay, thank you. So policy and leadership must shift to realize sustainable change. Policymaking tables should reflect the communities that are designed to impact, and formal leadership development pipelines are fundamental to achieving sustainable change. And last but not least is stewardship. So stewardship moves residents to a place of being both consumers and producers in the economy. As stewards of local wealth, residents exercise roles of economic governance and responsibilities. So we use all of these principles together to really think about what community wealth building looks like for our communities, for our policies, for our systems, and try to move away from extractive policies that do not work for us as we continue to move on this journey. So that's all I have for my presentation, and I'll take questions now.
Nkuli, I love what you just presented because I think on the one hand, like the first slide you talked about, you showed us, it really gave us tactics for how we can do economic development in a much more holistic and equitable way. And then the second slide you shared with us was really like the metrics, right? The framework that we should have at the forefront when we begin looking at economic development projects. And I'm wondering, I know there's a bunch of questions in the chat box, but I'm wondering, what do you think this says about the ecosystem? You had said that, you know, community wealth development and community wealth building, it's not like a 6-month deal, it's a generational deal. How does that intersect with like the ecosystem of education, housing, you know, healthcare, transportation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to really think about like what we have in community and what we can use to our advantage. So when we couple those things together, when we couple the community wealth building strategies with what we have in our local economies, that like helps us to bring a stronger foundation for what we're trying to do for the future. Like I can't do this myself as a nonprofit. Like I need like people in government, I need people in hospitals, I need people in schools. And it really helps us to like redirect or rechange the way we think and helps us to like be like more community like centered in a way. And it's not about, I think it's all like back to cooperatives, it's all about this like collective it's about being collective and not being individualistic in this thought.
Yeah. Aaron, do we have a question from the chat box?
We have such good questions. I'm trying to think how to get them all in. But I'm going to go with Lisa Sun's because you were just talking about that. So how can community wealth building work in tandem with local, state, and national economic development agencies and financial institutions to sort of reorient them